Yo, what is up, y'all? My name is Rob Donaldson, and welcome back to another edition of Rob's Best Bets. And in this episode, we are once again talking about college hoops, baby, here on Thursday, November 13th. And we have a really fantastic slate of games here on Thursday. It's not massive in terms of all the bets that are on the board available to us, but the angles that I think we have are very, very good. And as I'm recording this here on Wednesday, we have two massive bets still pending in terms of North Texas plus 2.5. They are up 10 with 4 minutes to go, knock on wood. And then we also have Montana State catching that 14.5 points. They're currently down 4 in the second half with 15 minutes to go. So potentially in the graphic, you are going to see, 3-1 plus 5.64 units, or you might see something else just depending on how those games shake out. And hopefully it is that first option. But with all that being said, y'all, I'm so excited to jump into these picks. But first, we do need to take a second to shout today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. And if you haven't already signed up using promo code ROBDFB, I highly recommend you guys do so. We are going to be cranking out a lot of player entries over on my Twitter, which is at RobDFB, over the coming weeks here in the college basketball world. So if you haven't already signed up, make sure you go and do so. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into these picks here on Thursday, November 13th in the college basketball world. All right, first up, we are taking a look at a matchup here between Central Michigan and South Alabama. This is tipping off at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and I really do love this game in terms of two kind of mid-major programs that I think are going to be comparable this season, but for different reasons. When you're looking at Central Michigan and Andy Bronkema in year one, coming over from Ferris State, a school that in the D2 ranks was actually very reputable and had won a lot of games in the Division II level. All of a sudden, we've talked about this with UC Riverside. We've talked about this over the years with a guy like a Josh Schertz, who was coaching Indiana State, Ben McCollum at Drake last season. A lot of these guys that get the, D2 to Division I bump and end up bringing over a number of their players, all of a sudden, those are some of the wagons that you want to hitch yourself to because the continuity is there. The motivation is there to make an imprint right away. And I do feel like this Central Michigan team could be a surprisingly very good team. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and we take the 5.5 points here for 2 units for our first bet here on Thursday. For pick number 2, we are once again going off the beaten trail, and we are talking about a matchup here between Cornell and Lafayette. And no, this is not Louisiana Lafayette like the Raging Cajuns. This is the Lafayette team that's coming out of the Patriot League. And when you are looking at this matchup here, and specifically on the Cornell side, I really like this Cornell team through 2 games. And you might be asking yourself or asking me, like, Rob, how can you like a team that's 0-2? And this is where I tell you, perception in the early goings, when we only have 2, 3, maybe even 4 games under these teams' belts, like you are going to have some mid-majors with some ugly-looking win-loss records that are so much better than that ugly win-loss record. And Cornell, they went on the road 2 times against Illinois State, Kent State, 2 teams that when you're looking at the Missouri Valley Conference or the MAC Conference as well, those are 2 teams that are going to be near the very top of the standings when it's all said and done, in my opinion. And Cornell easily could have won either of those games. That's truly how those games played out. And when you're looking at this matchup against Lafayette, I feel like Cornell has a really good chance to go out there and absolutely lay the wood. And because of that 0-2 record, I think we're getting a major discount on the much better team. So let's go ahead and lay the 4.5 points here for 4 units for our second bet here on Thursday. For pick number 3, we are heading out to the Backyard Brawl, where we have a matchup here between Pitt and West Virginia. And much like we saw early on this week in the college basketball world when Louisville took on Kentucky, this is just a major rivalry matchup. And I get it. You know, West Virginia over the last 2 times out against Pitt in this rivalry game have been run off the floor at home and on the road. But I will say in both of those matchups, West Virginia was dealing with a host of injuries, and that definitely contributed to those outcomes. And now we have a very similar instance where we saw Louisville come out with their hair on fire after having lost 3 straight in a row against Kentucky. Well, West Virginia's lost 2 straight. They do not want to make it 3, and they do have a really good team this year, in my opinion. And in this game in particular, again, I think they come out with their hair on fire and have a chance to win this one going away. So let's go ahead and lay the 5 points here with the Mountaineers for 2 units for our third bet here on Thursday. For pick number 4, we are heading down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where we have a matchup here between Purdue and the Crimson Tide. And obviously, this is kind of the run back from last year where Purdue, you know, it was a competitive first half when they played Alabama, but in the second half, Purdue laid the hammer, and no pun intended there, and they actually controlled Alabama on the glass, in the scoring department, in the turnover department. It was a roundhouse to the teeth for an Alabama team that had a lot of aspirations going into that game. And although Alabama has had some roster turnover, Nate Oates is still in the building. They still have some key guys at key positions that if you're trying to establish a culture, one, you remember last year. You remember coming up short. You remember that loss against Purdue in the early goings. And how do you respond in this game when you're on your home court going up against a team that kind of embarrassed you on that Friday night? I think Alabama is going to come out on fire, and because of the scoring, prowess that Alabama showed, not only, last season and all the years under Nate Oates, but even just last time out against St. John's, I think there's a really good chance that, again, Alabama can win this game going away. So let's go ahead and lay the 3.5 points here with the Crimson Tide for 4 units for our fourth bet here on Thursday. All right, for our final bet here on Thursday, we are heading down to the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas, the Octagon of Doom, where we have a matchup here between Cal and Kansas State. And Kansas State last year was a team that we just absolutely loved to fade. It was a roster comprised of NIL transfers that really did not gel well together. And that was kind of the poster boy of, I think, what can go wrong in this new era of roster construction, where you're just bringing in a lot of talented guys, hoping that they get along and share the ball and run efficient offense and play defense, do what they're supposed to do while they're getting paid. Well, last year's team was a disaster, and now they've got a fresh new look, a lot of new faces. Jerome Tang is obviously still the head coach, and I still have some belief that Jerome Tang can reignite this program to where he had it in the very early stages of his tenure. And going up against Cal and Mark Madsen, I do think that Cal is actually going to be a respectable team this season, but I do think this travel spot is very, very difficult. And I think early on, when you are playing your first ever road games, the shell shock of a crowd like we're going to see inside that Octagon of Doom might just be enough to kind of bury Cal from the outset. So let's go ahead and lay the 6.5 points here for 2 units for our final bet here on Thursday. All that being said, I really want to thank you guys for checking out today's video, and if you do want to show some love, make sure you drop a like on this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you guys comment down below. But with all that being said, y'all, I will see you in a future video. Take it easy.